All right, so we're going to continue on with Unit 1 and go into Section 3, which is going to focus on the environmental impacts of horticulture. And remember in Section 2, we talked about economic impacts. All right, so the main question we're going to focus on for this presentation is how is horticulture beneficial to the environment? So a lot of different practices that we can incorporate in the field of horticulture and all the subfields of horticulture that will have a positive impact on the environment. Here's a few of the objectives. Okay, explain the environment and issues related to the environment. Explain how horticulture is beneficial to the environment. Explain how horticulture can damage the environment. Identify how natural resources can be affected by horticultural practices. And identify how chemicals used in horticulture can affect the environment. First off, what is the environment? Well, the environment is the air, water, minerals, organisms, and all other external factors surrounding and affecting a given organism at any time. So it's all the living and non-living aspects of an area. Okay, it consists of biotic factors and abiotic factors, and by now you've heard those terms before. So just a reminder: biotic factors are living factors. Abiotic factors are non-living factors. An example of biotic factors are animals. An example of biotic factors is animals. An example of abiotic factors is air or temperature. All right, so the horticulture can control and affect the macro and micro environment. So the macro environment is the large atmosphere around a plant. Micro environment is the area immediately surrounding a plant. All right, so how do we produce high quality products at a low cost? Okay, number one, we need to look at land use. Then you need to look at sustainability or sustainable practices and biotech and genetic engineering. So basically, going back to what we talked about with the economic impact, is implementing science into your operation, whatever the operation is, finding the best ways, the safest ways, and the least impactful ways to produce whatever products are in demand in your area. All right, so some benefits of horticulture. Number one is recreational settings, okay, like golf courses or parks. Biological benefits as well. And we can work on preventing soil erosion. We can slow water runoff. We can absorb pollutants and control dust. There's a lot of different types of plants and vegetation that we can plant in certain areas to help these problems. And then landscaping, whether it be for a home or the park or a school or anything that we want to increase the aesthetic value of a in an area. All right, so impacts of horticulture, and we're going to focus on some topics that can happen if the right type of practices are not implemented. Number one is pollution. Okay, so this is harm caused to the environment by improperly applied chemicals. Point source pollution is pollution from an easily identifiable source. And the non-point source pollution is pollution from a few too many sources, and it is not easily identifiable. All right, so the hydraulic cycle, also known as the water cycle, is something that we've talked about before. We talked about it in biology. I'm not going to go through every step of the water cycle. Okay, know that precipitation is a big one, evaporation is a big one, and then the water runoff is what we focus on with agriculture. Number one, can we control it? Number two, are we polluting it? Because water runs to different larger bodies of water. So you can go back and watch this video or pause it here if you need to kind of refresh yourself on the water cycle and all these words. And if you have questions on these words, please let me know. Again, we do cover this in biology, so I'm not going to go through word for word. All right, so how does the How does a hydrologic cycle cause pollution? So eutrophication is the overabundance of nutrients in lakes or streams. It is caused by excessive fertilizer running off of nearby fields. Most fertilizers are high in nitrogen. Okay, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur are typically really high in fertilizers, with nitrogen being at the forefront. So then we also talk about the nitrogen cycle briefly. Okay, um, so nitrogen can enter an environment naturally, but some environments may use more nitrogen or may use the nitrogen faster than what it can be implemented into the environment. So we may have to, that's where fertilizers come into play, but there's ways to test the soil to figure out if it's nitrogen deficient or not, because if you add too much nitrogen, then that's a pollutant and it will run off into other larger bodies of water and causing a ripple effect of pollution there. So the nitrogen cycle in horticulture, this is when excess nitrogen is introduced to the nitrogen cycle and is mixed with nitrates found in the soil naturally. The result could be an increase in nitrate found in groundwater. This causes human and also animal health concerns. So the main concern with pesticides, okay, so pesticides are chemicals that are used to kill plant and animal pests. Pesticide residues have been proven to cause problems such as water contamination, emergence of resistant pest populations, and decline in certain bird populations. So the last slide is how do we fix this problem? And we'll talk about this in other units, especially if we get to some sustainability units. How do we fix this problem? Is reduce the needs for pesticides. Healthy plants do not need pesticides, and this goes back to science. The more we can learn and the more we can implement with our practices, the better off we'll be, not only as agriculture, community, but as a overall community in whole. Use better practices. Using pesticides properly can prevent leaching and surface runoff. Leaching is where it seeps through the ground into the water table underground. Buffer zones for filtration. They provide some type of, you can use certain plant root systems that help filter water sources and protect areas around water sources from erosion. Excuse me. Again, going to look at those biological impacts to try to limit surface runoff. All right, so be sure you complete the video form for this video, and if you have questions, please let me know. Thanks, guys.